Now, as a CIO, I'm sure you guys have often wondered how best to leverage existing investments and use your resources intelligently to transform your organization. You also wonder how to standardize processes and transform your requirements into strategic business opportunities. In this session, our next speaker, Alpna Doshi, CIO, Reliance Communications, will talk about IT at the center of transformation and how CIOs can create new revenue streams by taking a proactive approach that adds value to business by being integral part of strategic discussions. May I please request you, ma'am, to come up on stage.
Good morning, everyone, or rather good afternoon now. And I think we have had such good speakers coming in with exciting presentations on what really is happening in the industry and what more can happen. I think it is that time when everyone, and this is probably not very new, the transformation journey. Since the last 22 years I have been in this industry, I've heard only this word, transformation. So I also keep wondering, what is it new that we can do in this era where a significant transformation will come? Just to set the stage, the journey for every age and cycle is different. Because when we remember, any time ATM technology was introduced, it was like any kind of content could flow through. And today, that has become a reality. Today, you can see any kind of content across the globe flowing through pretty much seamlessly. There are hurdles and hassles. Possibly sometimes people blame it to IT, but we always have the simplest of the lot amongst all the functions to be blamed. That is an easy target, either IT or HR, if you don't have people, right? Attrition or IT. So what I would like to focus on is when the competition is tough right now for the businesses to make money. And since I specifically come with a lot of background in telecom business, my references would be related to the communications industry. You would see that for any large-scale transformation, there is a need for something that will glue everyone together, something that will make the required changes that are necessary for business to think about how to get new revenue streams coming. So from that perspective, our today's discussion, I would like to position it as, we will see that how IT is right at the center of everything. One of the speakers had alluded to whether a CIO, what does that I really stand for? And I was extremely intrigued by that point, because I honestly could stand for everything. When I talk to my business, they say that, okay, IT needs to deliver on XYZ for a reactive performance, but as soon as their revenue dips down, they said it was IT's fault. So does that mean IT needs to be a lot more proactive, right? Then they say, well, you have to be the innovation officer. Well, you have to be the integration officer. So I think, point taken in that regard, I just feel IT should be the intent officer. Intent is to do everything. Now it is up to the business how they can perceive and receive us, correct? So when I look around all the things that we support, you see that there is a significant influence of IT in global operators like Deutsche Telekom, O2, Verizon, etc., who have actually embraced a lot of the IT to do many things already, like machine to machine. Say, M-commerce in many countries is already there. We are beginning to do that in India. You talk about a robust architecture framework. The same thing, you will see that many companies have already adopted that. When we talk about catalysts, like whether it is a Subex or a C-Vidya or a Clarity, any of these good vendors that we will also see, I'm sure, around the floor, they are trying to introduce new ways of doing some new business solution such that it can be a lot more appealing to the customers. which should be where our eye ought to be at. And certainly operational excellence. But we sometimes get strayed by the aspect that we should talk about only bottom line improvements. I think if the eye is kept on the top line, then the bottom line automatically will be taken care of. That's specific to the IT hygiene that we ought to be working. As a reference, I will just share with you how at Reliance, since we have a centralized IT team, there is a power industry sector, there is infrastructure, metro, railroads, etc., insurance, telecom, analytics, power. Every other field has to be supported by the same business unit, which is the centralized IT. So when we look at it from that aspect, there is something which is called a common IT. Things like analytics, things like audio conferencing, video conferencing, many of the settings that we use in a day-to-day environment, those are the ones which are generally very common. And then we build to the vertical industries that we support overall. Now, when we see what's happening in the telecom strategies world, VAS, everyone has heard of. So the service delivery platform is one thing which every other telco would talk about. How can you have a robust SDP such that you can clearly do a plug-and-play environment? And when you can do a plug-and-play, it automatically gives you an option to connect various channel partners as part of that overall environment. And as a result of that, the entire revenue growth can be maximized and monitored using that particular SDP. Same way, we are also talking from a telecom environment of intelligent billing, which again can be enabled by many of the billing systems that we have in place right now. And one thing that I think that we ought to give a lot of focus to is the R&D that the telcos can do. Unless we think ahead of it, and that's always a catch, how much money can you get in order to invest in the R&D? And the problem I face is, well, today, let's talk about today. Let's not talk about what you need to support in the future. But are we shooting ourselves in the foot by not talking about the future, which was the case actually 10 years back? People would invest in R&D as well. So there is a bit of a change from that aspect. Now, as we see again through the transformation journey, and everyone is very familiar with the growth of all these multiple devices and well overused words of smartphones, Androids, etc. But what is it that we ask here IT can do? And that's where it comes into the picture of whether you're talking about location-based services or you're talking about, say, mobile advertising and NFC services. You see that for connection, and everyone has their own opinions, I'm sure, of BYOD, right? How many of you think BYOD should be encouraged? I still see not the whole hall being, hands up, that kind of a thing. So there are constraints that still need to be solved for BYOD. There are certain aspects where how do we manage BYOD from a security angle in the corporate culture, for example. So those have got to be still solved. Now, when we talk about this proliferation of so many devices worldwide and users internationally coming to India, for instance, then how do we integrate? What is a mobile device management strategy? And do we think mobile device management is already matured? I don't think mobile device management is matured yet. So there is so much more to be done where we can, in fact, influence the adoption of these particular devices by the customers so that IT can actually, drive the revenue growth from that angle. When we also talk about, various diverse portfolio and the improvement of customer experience. From a customer experience, I think we find that, one of the biggest reasons of stress of people is what? Can anyone take a guess? It is when you have to depend on someone for completion of a delivery, right? You are right there in the accountability thing, but you have to depend on someone else. And that's where it's coming more into the play of having self-enablement. So customers as well are going through that particular thing as they are traveling a lot, whether it is for airline industry or they are telecom customers, they all want to have the self-enablement. I mean, banking has been one of the, I guess, the pioneers in terms of trying to get the self-enablement done through mobile banking and other ways of implementing that. So the trend of this particular thing of device proliferation is significant, and in similar lines, when we talk about the cloud, right, and that's actually, I think while the hype has been there for a long enough time, it's still a little bit cloudy in terms of the overall adoption, correct? The private clouds are much more in vogue, but the public clouds as such, how much of an adoption they will go through, that is not clear yet. But it is also extremely prominent that the number of players who provide cloud services are certainly on the increase. The TCO has to come down for the operators and service providers. And as a result of that, when we talk about, say, customization and granular elasticity, that will automatically come in. So in our environment, wherever we can have contracts such that they can be set up in a much more flexible manner, where the billing and pricing can be done in a lot more flexible manner using the cloud strategy, it would be a win-win for both the customers and us, because we are able to support it at a lot lower cost, though the management of that is yet to be proven, how much of that additional cost gets introduced as a result of implementing a cloud. So the business case still needs to be completely justified in that regard. You can offer, obviously, a whole bunch of services. Is the Toyota on-demand model, which got introduced many years back, but it finally took off much later in terms of widespread adoption. The similar situation, I feel it is for cloud, where the synergies are there, people can see the benefits, but again, issues like security, I think are still very, very valid. Whenever there is some larger security threat that comes into the picture, people immediately come about and say that, should we put the most risky data on the cloud or not? We should just go with the low-hanging, low email or some such information application that can be put on the cloud. Now, one transformation that I would like to share with you, and perhaps also hear from some people in the crowd as well, is when we look at this entire cloud service brokerage, key aspect is businesses as end users are driving, in many regards, the service provider and the vendors. And the reason being, more and more money is being spent by these types of businesses where it can be supported by some niche providers. But when we look at what really needs to be the transformation, ideally speaking, the service providers, if you consider them right at the center of this brokerage, they are the people who are well aware of all the services that get offered in all possible areas, whether you call it utilities, services that a common customer has to pay, or whether they have to do banking, or any other services. But a service provider in general is either the dumb pipe, or it can be a more intelligent pipe. So when you look at it from that angle, the simplicity and the required security that can be offered from a service provider brokerage, while making it a lot more cleaner to offer the services to the businesses, and any part of AS that you can imagine, software, infra, or platform, it is going, and I think I heard someone else talk about how even the marketing campaigns, the marketing list for broadcasting can be provided by some XAS service. So everything you're asking for, something on the cloud. So what's stopping us from introducing into a model which will allow us to give this seamless connectivity? That's one of the major transformations that I see technology players playing a key role on. Now, analytics, I'm sure, is not an old subject for anyone by now. Analytics is being considered as one of the most significant drivers for any customer retention, any targeted campaigning that needs to happen, any amount of promotions that need to be generated. such that you don't have to generate 50,000 or 50 million OBD calls in order to attract customers. And many times, what do we find? Some bhajan is actually going to somebody who doesn't listen bhajan. Something else is getting targeted. Some content is wrongly targeted to the wrong audience. That's where I see that analytics playing a very, very key role. And analytics is nothing but a big customer value management tool that is enabled through the IT organizations. Overall, the spend does matter. And we have seen that there is a decreasing trend of IT spend. Whether, a few point percentage globally means quite a lot of money. As well as, if you look at it in context of, say, a telco spend, they have spent up about 3% in 2012 compared to 7.6% in 2011. Now, the global spending, as you can see the numbers, to reach about 2.5 trillion. So when we see all these numbers, are cloud computing, context awareness, pattern-based strategy, and virtualization, are they some of the key applications in which we ought to be looking from a vendor spend, from an IT spend perspective? Are these the areas where the product teams should be targeting? What exactly should be the output given to the businesses and customers who are our end users? And even from a revenue trend standpoint, we all know that the voice revenue has declined, and it has to be supplemented by much of the data revenue growth, which again has been enabled by the devices. But overall, revenue and margins are decreasing in mature markets. And this is one information most of us are actually aware of. However, how do we improve the margins is the question. So in this particular age, when we have to increase the margin, it has to be done through three key factors. One is improving the customer satisfaction. The other one is through improvement of the trade, because all of the retailers, distributors, at least in some of the telecom environments, have to be enabled with the right kind of connectivity and the tools that are needed. And especially for many of our market shares where rural environment plays a key role, those are areas where we need to go on volume rather than high margin customers. So those are the strategies that the IT teams need to define for our businesses. I think cutting costs is a very, very short-term outlook. It is not a long-term solution. In my mind, instead, we ought to focus a lot more on the innovation of new services and markets and revenues. And finally, to bring all of this together, as we all know, the best possible thing that could have happened are some of these social media networking, and which is connecting every other customer across the globe. And that's where we can bring many of the things with respect to customer profiling. What is the type of service that can be given to those customers? And many of the blogs and conversations, if the appropriate analytics is applied on that, you can actually generate new emerging streams of businesses which will be propelled very much by IT. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk here, and I really appreciate any kind of feedback you may have or any discussions around this topic. Thank you.
Any questions for ma'am? Okay, don't seem to be any questions, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Please accept this.